In this video, we're going to be going over the new additions and revamps to the Building Additions add-on. So let's get into it. The selector item is what you'll use to make a selection. So now you can see you also have point A and point B as well, and we'll get into that later. Once you've made your selection, the selector item will be turned into the pusher item. With this, you can push your selection and whatever's in it around wherever you may need. When you use it, it will reset your selection and give you the selector back. The point A and point B movers are what you'll use to change your selection without having to redo the entire thing. So you can right click to switch between the point A and point B movers. So if I do that, you'll move point B and change the selection. And then I can switch back to point A and then it changes it again. There are options for your selection. You can use this options item to change the color and the particles for your selection. So let's say I wanted like an almost minty green color. I could do something kind of like this, and then we'll change it to a circle. There we go. So you can change all the colors and particles for it so that you can differentiate between your selection and your friend's selection if you are playing in a multiplayer world with this add-on. This is how the sphere placer works. It will place a sphere at the point A, and it will use the block that is in the first hotbar slot. So if we make a selection here and we use this item, we can set our radius. So if you have a radius of 1, it'll just be 1. So if you have a radius of like 8, you might need to move back actually. Then it will place a sphere with a radius of 8. Now this can go up to 32 blocks. It's not recommended for lower end devices because it is a lot of blocks being placed and some calculations, but it can go up to 32 blocks. Here's how the line placer works. It will draw a line using the block that is in the first slot of your hotbar. So here's how it works. If we use it, you'll see we've got radius and a couple other options. So right now we're just going to say we know that the radius is 1. We'll place the line. It'll make sure that we know what block we're using. And then there you go. You've got your line placed. So let's get into the other options. What you can do is you can lerp between radii. So what I mean by that is you can go from like a radius of 1 to a radius of like 3 at point B. And let's say we want to constrain it to the selection so that the larger radius doesn't bleed outside of our selection. So we'll do a constrain and then we'll place line, and then you can see that it will go from large to small. Don't quite know why it's doing that. I think it's just a awkward angle for it. Usually that doesn't happen. But anyways, if we were to do the same thing with 1, 3, and not constraint to selection, and I place the line, you can see that the line will start bleeding outside of our selection. So in case you don't want that, there is an option for that. Here's how the full replace works. So once you have a selection made, you can use it to replace every block of the same type of the block you hit with the block in the first slot of your hotbar. So what I mean by that is if you hit this white concrete here, it'll say you're fully replacing white concrete with red concrete. Do you want to continue with this action? We'll say yes, and then there we go. Now keep in mind that if you were to like draw something else in here or whatever, it will only replace the block that you hit. So red concrete with gold, there we go. It won't touch anything else in that area. Here's how the block and state replace works. So there may be some instances where you have a block with a specific block state that you want to replace with another block. So this is where you'd use the block and state replace. Because if you were to use the full replace like this, you can see it doesn't keep those block states and it gets all messed up. This is how normal replacement with the fill command works. So instead, you'll use the block and state replace. So with this, it'll say keeping block states, i.e. direction, form, etc. And then you can see it keeps the states. One of the other things you can do with it, because this also has block states, is do stuff like this. Replace trapdoor with iron trapdoor. Boom, there you go. You don't need to have redstone for it. There's a bunch of blocks that have these different block states like direction and stuff like that, and that's where you'll use the block and state replace. Here's how the randomized fill works. What it needs is blocks in your top row of your inventory. So if we put these here and right click, it'll show us the percentages of each of the blocks that will be used for the randomized fill. So if we say we want more yellow and try that again, you'll see that the percentages have shifted around. So it's really based on how many items of each block are in this top row. So what you can do is once you have a selection, you will hit the ground and it'll say you're replacing white concrete with randomized fill. Are you sure you want to continue? And we'll say yes, and then there you go. You can also see that the correct amounts of each block are represented. You can see there's a lot more yellow, there's a little bit less orange, and there's barely any red in this selection. So you could use this for like paths or terrain or just basically any sort of randomization you may need. This is how the gradient fill works. So once you have your selection, what you'll do is make a list of all the blocks you want in your gradient in the top row of your inventory. So these will be all the blocks that will be used for our gradient. So what you can do is you can use this in any direction. So we're just going to go in this direction. And if we have our randomness set to 0, this is what happens. You get clear lines of where each of the blocks are. Instead, if you wanted to have more blended gradient, this is what you do. You'll hit it just the same, and then we'll add some randomness to it. So we're just gonna do, 1.2 is fine. And then we'll do that, and then you can see you get a lot more randomization and you get a lot more blending. Now, do know that you can double up on a single block, and that will add more to wherever that part is. It's just left to right, that's the way it will be read. So this will be the closest to you, and this will be the farthest from you. And like I said, it works in all directions. Here's how the stack item works. So first you'll make your selection, and then what you can do is you'll stack in the direction that you want to stack in. You'll hit it in that direction. So you can see saying we're going east, so positive X, and let's just say we want to stack by 4. And then there you go. It'll take this selection and stack by 4. Let's say you wanted to add a offset to it. So if you wanted to add an offset, let's say we want to go up and diagonally. So let's do 4, and let's say we're gonna go up by 1 every time, and then we're going to go positive z by 3. Then if we stack, you can see you're still stacking, and you're getting the offset of 3 and up by 1 every time. 3, 1, 3, 1. So that's how the stack works. Here's how the brush works. So first we're gonna go into brush options, and we'll set the radius of our brush. So we'll say 2.5, and we'll submit changes, and then you can see if we start using the brush, it'll start placing spheres where we are looking. Now, let's say you don't want it to place spheres. You want it to just replace blocks. So that's when you turn on the keep air option. So with that, you can see that it is painting just the blocks. It's not adding any blocks. But you can see there's some bleed. This is especially noticeable when you have bigger brushes than 2.5. So this is where the option to only replace block in slot 2. So if we submit changes and put gold in our second slot, you can see when I'm doing this down here, it's only replacing that block. Another thing that you can do with it is do a randomized fill. So if we make this a little bit bigger and do randomized fill and keep all the other settings that we had, we'll do Y concrete, so we'll only be replacing that. We've got our blocks for the randomized right here, and you can see that now we can sort of draw paths or whatever we want and use randomization. The last thing about this is that you can also make a constraint for it. So if we do brush options, we'll turn these off, and we do constraint to selection box. Let's bring this down a little bit. Then when we paint and do our spheres, they'll stay within the box and not go outside of it. Because if we don't have that constraint, then we can paint wherever, and you may want to do that, but maybe you don't. So that option to constrain it to the selection box is also there for you. So that about does it. Thanks for watching this showcase slash update slash tutorial for all the new stuff and all the revamps. Hopefully you found it helpful. Feel free to leave a comment on what you'd like to see from this next. I want to get the community a little bit more involved in my projects, and that's a way you can do it. Another way is joining the Discord and let me know what you think. I try to post more of the day-to-day stuff there, so if you want to see more stuff like that, head on over to the Discord. And that's about it. See ya.